Name is Skylar, and up until that horrific afternoon on Route 9, I was the kind of woman who believed that love meant enduring everything for the sake of peace. I am 28 years old, and for the last year, I have lived inside a psychological prison, desperately trying to protect the tiny life growing inside my belly. I was 8 months pregnant with my miracle baby boy, a child I had prayed for, yet his upcoming arrival brought no joy to the household I lived in. Instead, it brought cold, calculated malice. To understand how I ended up bleeding on the side of a highway, you have to understand the family I married into. 3 years ago, I married Austin, thinking he was the man of my dreams, and for a long time he was, or at least he pretended to be while his father was still alive. My father-in-law, Arthur, was the anchor of that family. He was a deeply kind, honorable man who saw how fragile my relationship with his wife and daughter was. Arthur was my ultimate supporter. He was the one who would sit me down, hand me a cup of tea, and say, "Skylar, don't let them push you around. You are a gem, and Austin is lucky to have you." He established boundaries. He kept the wolves at bay. When Lydia, my mother-in-law, or Chloe, my sister-in-law, tried to make passive-aggressive comments about my background or my career, Arthur would shut them down with a single sharp look. He protected me, and because of him, I felt safe. But exactly 14 months ago, Arthur passed away from a sudden heart attack. The day we buried him was the day my safety net vanished into thin air. Without Arthur's roaring presence to keep them in check, the true nature of the family crept out of the shadows. Lydia and Chloe didn't just dislike me, they resented my very existence in Austin's life, and the most heartbreaking part was watching my husband. Without his father's guidance, Austin completely shifted. It was as if the man I loved had dissolved overnight, leaving behind a weak, easily manipulated shadow who fell completely under the toxic spell of his mother and sister. They began whispering in his ear daily, poisoning his mind against me, telling him I was controlling, that I didn't respect his father's memory, and that I was trying to isolate him. I watched my marriage turn into a battleground where I was completely unarmed, holding my breath every day, hoping things would get better once was born. I didn't know that my silence was only feeding their cruelty. The shift in our household after Arthur's passing wasn't subtle. It was an absolute onslaught. I went from being Austin's partner to a glorified unpaid servant in a house that felt less like a home and more like an emotional execution chamber. Lydia and Chloe moved into our lives with a suffocating permanence, and Austin welcomed them with open arms, completely blind to the fact that they were systematically picking away at my sanity. I became the ultimate giver in that house, a woman desperate to buy a shred of peace while they operated as a unified front of heartless takers. When I found out I was pregnant, I thought it would be a turning point. I thought the miracle of a new life would soften Lydia's bitter heart and make Austin remember the vows he made to me. Instead, my high-risk pregnancy became a weapon they used against me. Because of severe complications, my doctor strictly ordered me to rest, but in our house, resting was treated as a crime. Lydia would intentionally wake up early, slamming pots and pans in the kitchen, demanding that I prepare a full 3-course breakfast from scratch. If I moved too slowly because of the blinding morning sickness, she would sigh loudly, look at Austin, and say, "In my day, women worked in the fields until the hour they gave birth. Skylar is just using this pregnancy as an excuse to be lazy and treat my son like a servant." And Austin, instead of defending the woman carrying his child, would glare at me and snap, "Just do what my mother asks, Skylar. Stop causing drama." Chloe was no better. She was a 24-year-old spoiled brat who had never worked a day in her life, funded entirely by Austin's compliance. Every single day, I withstood her passive-aggressive remarks about my changing body, my clothes, and my family. But the emotional abuse reached a financial breaking point 4 months ago. Chloe decided she wanted a lavish week-long birthday vacation in Cabo San Lucas with her friends. She didn't have the money, and Lydia insisted that Austin cover it as a good older brother. The problem was Austin had already drained our joint accounts to pay for Lydia's country club memberships. That was when Austin cornered me in our bedroom. He demanded that I wire $15,000 from my personal savings account, money I had painstakingly earned from my digital consulting work before the pregnancy got bad, money I had explicitly set aside for our baby's hospital bills and nursery. "It's my sister's golden birthday, Skylar," Austin said, his voice cold and uncompromising as he stood over me. Family comes first. You're sitting on that money while my sister is stressed out. Wire it to her account tonight. Austin, that is our baby's emergency fund, I begged, tears streaming down my face as I clutched my stomach. My pregnancy is high risk. What if something goes wrong? What if the delivery requires a C-section? We need this cushion. Lydia, who had been listening at the door, barged in without knocking. Look at her, Austin. She's hoarding money from your own blood. She doesn't view us as family. If she cared about you, she wouldn't hesitate to help your sister. Austin looked at me with absolute disgust. If you don't do this, Skylar, don't look at me as your husband anymore. You're being selfish, and I won't tolerate a selfish woman in this house. I collapsed onto the bed sobbing. The pressure was suffocating. I felt so isolated, so entirely unsupported, that I gave in. I opened my laptop with trembling fingers and transferred the $15,000 to Chloe. I completely bankrupted my own safety net just to buy a temporary truce, naive enough to think that my massive sacrifice would finally earn me their affection, or at least a little bit of respect. But all it did was teach them a dangerous lesson. It taught them that there were absolutely no limits to what they could strip away from me. They had taken my voice, they had taken my peace, and now they had taken my financial security. I was left completely vulnerable, hovering in the 8th month of my pregnancy, entirely at the mercy of 3 monsters. The ultimate betrayal happened on a sweltering morning when the humidity was so thick it felt heavy in my lungs. Austin's distant college friend was getting married in a town 3 hours away, and the wedding festivities were scheduled to last the entire weekend. From the moment I woke up that morning, my body felt completely wrong. My ankles were swollen to twice their size, a dull crushing ache throbbed in my lower back, and I was experiencing sharp, irregular Braxton Hicks contractions that made me gasp for air. I sat on the edge of our bed holding my heavy belly when Austin walked in, fully dressed in a tailored suit. Why aren't you dressed yet? He snapped, checking his watch. We need to pick up my mom and Chloe in 20 minutes. Austin, please, I whispered, my voice cracking with exhaustion. I can't go. Something feels wrong today. The contractions are getting tighter, and sitting in a car for 3 hours will be agonizing. Please let me stay home. Go with your mom and sister, enjoy the wedding, but let me rest. Before Austin could even answer, the bedroom door flew open. Lydia and Chloe walked right in, already decked out in their expensive silk dresses and heavy jewelry. Lydia looked down her nose at me, her eyes flashing with instant irritation. Oh, give me a break, Skylar. She sneered, crossing her arms. The wedding starts in 4 hours and you're still playing the victim card. I knew you'd try to pull something like this. Mom is right. Chloe chimed in, tossing her curled hair over her shoulder. You just want to ruin my brother's weekend. It's embarrassing for him to show up to a massive social gathering alone. People are going to ask questions and your petty absence is going to make our family look bad. I am 8 months pregnant with a high-risk medical condition. I yelled back, a rare spark of anger fighting through my exhaustion. This isn't a game. I am in actual pain. Austin didn't care. He grabbed my arm, not hard enough to leave a bruise, but with a cold, aggressive finality that shook me to my core. Get up, Skylar. You are not staying here to make a fool out of me. My friends are expecting us. Put on a dress, get in the car, and stop acting like you're the first woman in history to carry a child. Deeply outnumbered, terrified of being left alone in the house without a car because Austin had locked my keys away, and drowning in compliance, I gave in. I threw on a loose denim shirt and maternity jeans, tears blurring my vision as I was marched out of my own home like a prisoner. They forced me into the back seat of Austin's pristine, brand-new luxury sedan, the one he treated like a sacred object. Chloe claimed the front passenger seat so she wouldn't ruin her hair, while Lydia sat next to me in the back, shifting away as if my pregnant body was an infectious disease. An hour into the drive, we hit the highway on Route 9. The road was deserted, surrounded by thick woods and patches of wild lupine flowers. The tension inside the car was suffocating. Chloe was blasting music, Lydia was loudly talking about how much she spent on her dress, and Austin was driving like a maniac, weaving through lanes at over 80 miles per hour. Suddenly, Austin swerved to pass a truck and didn't see a massive deep pothole in the asphalt until it was too late. The car hit the crater with a violent, catastrophic jolt. The impact slammed my body upward, and a sharp, blinding, white-hot pain shot straight through my abdomen. I gasped, clutching my stomach as a terrifying sensation followed. Pop! It felt like a balloon bursting inside me. Instantly, a warm, uncontrollable rush of fluid soaked through my jeans and saturated the premium, light grey leather seat beneath me. My water had broken, a month too early. Austin, stop the car. I screamed, a wave of primal panic seizing my entire body. My water just broke. Oh my God, Austin, the baby is coming. We need to go to the nearest hospital right now. The car didn't fill with concern. It filled with absolute, unadulterated fury. Lydia looked down at the seat, her face contorting into an expression of pure disgust. Look at the seat, Austin. She just ruined your custom leather. It's completely soaked. It's staining. Are you kidding me right now? Chloe shrieked from the front, turning around to glare at me. The smell is going to ruin my designer dress. She did this on purpose. She knew exactly what she was doing to ruin this trip. Austin looked in the rearview mirror, his eyes wild with a terrifying, unhinged rage. He didn't ask if I was okay. He didn't ask if his son was breathing. He looked at the ruined leather seat, slammed his foot on the brake, and violently pulled the car onto the gravel shoulder of the highway. He threw the car into park, marched to the back, and ripped my door open. Get out, he roared, his voice trembling with anger. Get out of my car right now. Austin, please. I am in labor. I need a doctor. I sobbed, the first massive real contraction clamping down on my uterus so hard I couldn't stand straight. He didn't listen. He reached into the car, grabbed my arm, and violently dragged my body out onto the gravel. My knees scraped against the dirt. I desperately clutched the car door, my fingers freezing onto the handle. Austin leaned down, forced my fingers off his door one by one, and shoved me backward into the weeds. Lydia rolled down her window, her parting words cutting through the humid air like a blade. You and that baby aren't worth ruining our weekend, Skylar. Enjoy the walk. Austin slammed the door shut, hit the gas, and the luxury sedan sped away into the distance, leaving me entirely alone, bleeding and screaming in the dirt. Sitting there in the dirt, watching the dust kick up from the tires of my husband's car as it disappeared over the horizon, the weeping, terrified version of me died right there on the shoulder of Route 9. The overwhelming physical agony of my 8-month contractions was suddenly overtaken by a cold, numbing wave of absolute clarity. For months, I had allowed them to strip away my dignity, my savings, and my voice, all in the name of keeping a peace that never existed. But as I looked down at my soaked jeans and felt my baby boy kick desperately against my ribs, the fog completely cleared. Crying wasn't going to save my son. Being compliant to monsters had almost cost us our lives. I wiped the sweat and tears from my face, a fierce, burning determination hardening inside my chest. I realized with absolute certainty that being kind was no longer an option. It was time to survive, and then it was time for a reckoning. I dragged my body out of the sharp gravel, crawling inch by inch toward the patch of wild lupins on the grassy embankment, so I wouldn't be hit by passing traffic. My vision was starting to tunnel from the sheer pain, but I forced my trembling hand into my pocket. Thank God my phone was still there. Austin had locked my car keys away, but he hadn't taken my phone. With ice-cold focus, I unlocked the screen and dialed 911. Emergency, what is your location? The operator's voice crackled through the speaker. I'm 8 months pregnant. My water broke. I'm in active labor. I gasped out, fighting through another crushing wave of pain that made my abdomen rock hard. My husband dragged me out of the car. I'm stranded on the shoulder of Route 9, exactly 2 miles past mile marker 44. Please, send an ambulance. My baby is coming. The operator assured me that paramedics were being dispatched immediately, but I wasn't done. I hung up and immediately dialed the real anchors of my life, the people who actually loved me. I called my father, Marcus. The moment his roaring voice filled the speaker, the last bit of my fear transformed into pure steel. Skylar, honey, what's wrong? Dad, I choked out, trying to keep my voice steady. Austin left me. He dragged me out of his car and left me on the side of Route 9 near mile marker 44. My water broke, Dad. I'm completely alone. I heard a terrifying smash on the other end of the line, the sound of my father slamming his fist into a table. Elena, Leo, get to the car now. My father roared to my mother and brother. He turned back to the phone, his voice shaking with a mixture of pure panic and protective rage. Skylar, hold on. Do you hear me? Focus on my voice. We are getting into the SUV right now. We are flying down the highway. Your brother is driving. Do not close your eyes, Skylar. We are coming to get you and my grandson, and I swear to God, Austin will pay for this. Hearing my family's unified voice gave me the final surge of strength I needed to stay conscious as the roaring sound of a distant ambulance siren began to echo down the deserted highway. The next 30 minutes were a blur of flashing lights, roaring engines, and a frantic high-stakes rescue operation. The ambulance arrived first, its sirens wailing as 2 paramedics rushed down the grassy embankment to stabilize me. Just as they were lifting my trembling body onto the stretcher, a loud screech of tires echoed down Route 9. My brother, Leo, slammed the brakes of my family's SUV, and my father, Marcus, and mother, Elena, sprinted out of the vehicle. The horror on my mother's face when she saw my scraped knees and soaked clothes was something I will never forget. My father marched straight up to the state trooper who had arrived alongside the ambulance. Marcus was a man of quiet dignity, but right then, his voice shook the asphalt. My daughter was thrown out of a moving vehicle in active labor, my father told the officer, his eyes blazing. Her husband, Austin, and his family left her here to die so they wouldn't miss a wedding reception. I want a full criminal report filed immediately. This is felony reckless endangerment, domestic abuse, and desertion of a vulnerable person. While the paramedics rushed me toward the hospital with my mother holding my hand in the back of the ambulance, my father and Leo stayed behind with the state trooper to provide Austin's license plate number, phone records, and GPS coordinates. The legal machinery of the United States justice system was set into motion before I even reached the emergency room. While I was being wheeled into emergency surgery for a premature delivery, the State Highway Patrol was tracking Austin's phone location in real time. They traced his luxury sedan directly to the high-end wedding venue 2 hours away. Austin, Lydia, and Chloe had no idea that their arrogant weekend trip was about to turn into a public execution of their freedom. 2 hours into the wedding reception, while they were sitting at a table laughing and drinking champagne, 4 state trooper vehicles pulled up to the venue with their lights flashing. According to the police report my brother later showed me, the officers didn't wait for the reception to end. They walked straight onto the crowded dance floor and confronted Austin. The music stopped. The entire room went dead silent. Austin, you are under arrest for felony reckless endangerment, domestic assault, and criminal abandonment of a dependent person, the lead officer announced loudly. Austin's face drained of all color. What? This is a misunderstanding. My wife is just dramatic. Before he could finish his sentence, the officers grabbed his arms, spun him around, and slammed him against the wall. They slapped heavy steel handcuffs onto his wrists. Lydia began screaming, throwing a tantrum, and claiming they were violating her son's rights, while Chloe tried to film the officers with her phone, shrieking about how wealthy they were. The police didn't care. They grabbed Lydia and Chloe by their silk-dressed arms, informing them they were being charged as accomplices to a felony and for obstruction of justice. In front of all of Austin's college friends, his business associates, and the horrified bride and groom, the 3 of them were marched out of the venue in handcuffs. Their expensive designer clothes dragging in the dirt as they were stuffed into the back of separate police cruisers and read their Miranda rights. They went straight from a luxury wedding reception to cold concrete holding cells, held without bail because of the life-threatening nature of my condition. The final confrontation took place inside a federal family and criminal court building, where I stood tall, flanked by my parents and my brother. Across the room sat Austin, Lydia, and Chloe. The arrogant smirks they had worn for years were entirely gone. They were dressed in bright orange county jail jumpsuits, their wrists chained to their waists. Under the strict application of U.S. criminal laws, the judge showed them absolutely no leniency. For the felony of reckless endangerment and malicious abandonment of a pregnant woman, Austin was sentenced to a maximum term of 7 years in a state penitentiary. Lydia and Chloe were sentenced to 4 years each as active accomplices to a life-threatening crime. But my real victory happened in the family court. My family's aggressive attorney utilized the criminal conviction to fast-track an absolute divorce on the grounds of extreme life-threatening cruelty. Under state law, Austin was stripped of every single parental right. The judge granted me sole physical and legal custody of my beautiful newborn son, Leo Jr., who had been delivered safely via emergency surgery weighing just 4 pounds, but fighting with the same strength as his mother. Austin didn't just lose his freedom, he lost everything else. The court ordered a massive financial liquidation of his personal assets to pay for my extensive medical bills, punitive damages, and a lifetime child support structure that guaranteed he would pay for his cruelty from behind bars. My story finishes 6 months later in the warm, sunlit living room of my brand new home. I bought it entirely on my own using the surging income from my digital consulting business, which I worked tirelessly to rebuild while my son napped. As I sit here rocking Leo Jr. in my arms, looking out the window at the peaceful backyard, I feel a profound sense of freedom. My parents and brother live just 10 minutes away, a fierce shield of real love surrounding us every single day. I look down at my son's smiling face and realize that the night Austin left me on that highway, he thought he was ending my life. He had no idea he was actually forcing me to start a new one. One where I am completely independent, fiercely loved, and finally free. I often look back at that burning asphalt on the highway and ask myself one question. If you were standing in my shoes that day, could you have ever found it in your heart to forgive those monsters? I chose to fight for my son because sometimes staying silent is nothing less than a death sentence. If my journey touched your heart and you believe that true justice won, please hit that like button right now and leave a comment below telling me what you would have done in my place. For more raw, gripping stories of survival and justice, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a single upload. Thank you for listening. Take care of yourself.